Throughout The Sopranos, we see many conversations that dwell on the past. Whether it was Richie April gloating about the time he took the infamous jacket off Rocco DeMeo.
What's this?
What's this? It's the jacket!
The jacket?
The jacket. I took off Rocco DeMeo.
Oh, yeah.
Cocksucker had the toughest reputation in Essex County, but he never came back after I got through with him.
Or Paulie and Beansy reminiscing on their youth during the summer of '78 while down in Florida. When it comes to the past, we know that Tony oddly dislikes hearing about memories, nostalgia, and good times.
Hey, you remember when those Guidos from Patterson, they caught you up at Garrett Mountain, they had you barricaded in your old man's car, and I whipped that rock and hit that guy in the eye?
Don't reminisce on me.
That's because, remember when is the lowest form of conversation.
With these memories and storylines, we see that most of them are just brought up during conversation and remain unsolved in the eyes of the viewer by never getting brought up again and getting swept under the rug by the series' characters. And with the Many Saints of Newark trailer releasing just last week, we can clearly see that this film reminisces on Tony's life and his youth as an up-and-coming gangster. That's why in this video I'll be discussing 5 nostalgic Sopranos storylines that we need to have in the Many Saints of Newark. Before we get started, be sure to click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content and the Many Saints of Newark content as well. With the film focusing on the infamous life of Dickie Moltisanti, Christopher's father who died while Christopher was at a young age, we can finally see about the legendary gangster who Tony praised constantly throughout the show. In The Sopranos, we knew very little when it came to the status of Dickie Moltisanti, as what we were told was passed down through the grapevine by Tony. What we do know is that he was married to Christopher's mother Joanne, was Carmela's cousin, had his battles with drugs and alcohol, and was a soldier in the Soprano crew. From what we can see in the trailer, we know that Dickie had a strong influence on Tony, as Dickie acts as a father figure towards Tony, much like Tony does with Christopher throughout the show. But we also see his drug problem taking the shape and discover a possible source for Christopher's connection with his battles with drugs and alcohol. But there's also the unsolved storyline of the death of Dickie Moltisanti. Towards the end of his life, there seemed to be this back and forth battle between Gilly Ruffalo and Moltisanti, as Ruffalo killed Moltisanti's cellmate while in prison. In retaliation, Moltisanti clawed Ruffalo's eye out for revenge, thus resulted in a hit being ordered on Moltisanti and him dying apparently in front of Christopher's childhood home while carrying a TV tray or crib inside for Christopher. However, in the first episode of Season 4, For All Debts Public and Private, Tony claims that Gilly Ruffalo hired a crooked cop in Barry Haidu to kill Moltisanti. But from the conversation between Barry and Christopher, we don't really know if this apparent story that comes from Tony in the early morning hours of the night while Christopher is high off heroin is true or not, as Haidu begs for his life and hollers to Christopher that whoever is telling him this information is lying and setting him up.
You're being set up! He's lying to you, whoever he is.
But from what we can see from the trailer, we know that an African-American man is upset over Dickie and seems to seek revenge towards him while holding a gun. So this does create a curveball in the storyline of Dickie Moltisanti. In The Sopranos, we apparently know that a crooked cop killed Christopher's father, but while in the trailer on the other hand, this African-American man seems to seek revenge for Moltisanti. As we progress closer and closer towards the film being released, it would be amazing to find out who the actual killer was who killed Dickie Moltisanti. Was Tony lying and setting up Christopher, or was he telling the truth? Ecclie Soprano, also known as Ecclie, was a character that seemed to catch everyone off guard, including Tony, as Uncle Junior brought him up to Tony in episode 6 of season 2, The Happy Wanderer. With this sudden comment that blurted out of Uncle Junior, Tony discovered that his father had another brother other than Uncle Junior and that he had another uncle. It's here where Tony discovered that he had a mild form of retardation, and with Tony's grandparents immigrating from Italy, they had a difficult time adjusting to life in the United States while also dealing with Ecclie's delay. Junior states that it was unfortunate that Ecclie was born in the era that he was, as his life could have been so much different with today's healthcare system and workers having a better understanding for issues like Down syndrome, as it has become more publicly acceptable. Much like the life of Christopher's grandfather, Hollywood Dickie Moltisanti, played by Ray Liotta, another character that we know nothing about, it would be so interesting to see another character in Ecclie, a character we know nothing about, to come up during the Many Saints of Newark. Another storyline that would be interesting to see would be the lives of Johnny Boy Soprano, Livia, and Johnny's girlfriend, Fran Felstein. A look back into their lives during the 1960s would be interesting to say the least. Throughout the show, we are treated to a few flashbacks throughout the series that display the rottenness and resent that carried with Livia throughout her life, but also the rocky relationship that was between Livia and Johnny. It would be interesting to see the proclaimed image and utter appreciation that Tony claimed Johnny Boy Soprano had. A look back into the house that Tony grew up in could answer numerous questions about how Tony got to be the man that he is and the status of his mental health. With Felstein, we know that she was Johnny Boy's girlfriend right up until the day he died when he was sick. When Tony met her, she had plenty of stories and could go on for hours about her glory days. She also mentioned to have gotten into a bit of trouble with Uncle Junior and Hesh. To see the unknown drama form into shape, as well as a younger Hesh and Felstein, would be fascinating by having the guys and gals head off to casinos down in Atlantic City while heading off to Copacabanas while dolled up in their Lincolns and Cadillacs. In order to be in the Mafia, you must be able to murder someone. And in episode 15 of season 6, Remember When, we see Tony's first killing. Here, we are taken on a trip down memory lane. We see that Larry Barisi has flipped to the feds and confessed the whereabouts of Tony's first murder, a bookie named Willie Overall. We are then treated to a flashback of Tony committing his first murder in a basement with Polly. As learned from Polly, the murder happened during Labor Day weekend in 1982. And with the film taking place during the Newark race riots that happened in 1967, it seems unlikely that we will see Tony commit his first murder. But at the same time, you never know, as we could potentially see some sort of flash forwards throughout the film that jump into the early days of Tony in his 20s. Throughout the series, it's extremely evident that Tony completely hates the entire concept that revolves around the varsity athlete remark that gets brought up constantly throughout the show. From Uncle Junior, we know that Tony excelled at being an athlete but never had the makings, the hands, or mindset to focus on athletics.
Yeah, I could barely hit 250.
That's because you didn't want it. Too busy chasing skirt.
It would be so cool to see a young Tony Soprano playing football and trying to catch that infamous fly ball that he never caught that resulted in Uncle Junior being so embarrassed to see his friends over. It would just be interesting to see Tony's high school experience as a whole, as we could possibly see the beginnings of his relationship with Coach Molinaro and the leader that Tony apparently was on and off the field. And also the storyline of how Tony and Carmela fell in love would also be fascinating to see. As heard from Ralph Cifaretto, we know that Tony had his own little crew growing up as a gangster. The crew consisted of Tony, Ralph, Jackie Aprile Sr., and Silvio, according to Ralph.
We had our own little crew. Me, your dad, Bonanima, Tony, Silvio, Dante.
What we also hear from Ralph is the supposed legendary story of how Tony and Jackie Aprile Sr. took down Feech LaManna's card game. This card game put Tony and Jackie Aprile Sr. over the top as they walked away with over $20,000 and were on their way to becoming main members in the Mafia. What we see in the trailer for The Many Saints of Newark is a young Tony Soprano growing up in the Mafia. We also see him walking with what appears to be some of his friends. If the film were to showcase this legendary story of the infamous card game, it would be fascinating to see the similarities of this card game and Jackie's. And it would also be interesting to see who the supposed hippie was that Ralph was sleeping with at the time as to why he couldn't make the robbery. There's also a theory that states there was no card game and that Ralph was simply setting up Jackie Jr. and his friends as a way out of the relationship with Rosalie. If there was no card game robbery that took place between Tony and his crew, it would answer the theory to if Ralph was setting up Jackie. I know I'm missing plenty of more potential storylines that could be in the movie, like Tony and his relationship with Charmaine, or the night where Tony Blundetto went to jail. What Sopranos nostalgic storyline do you want to see in The Many Saints of Newark? Let me know down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos themed content and The Many Saints of Newark content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.